member of our community on today's episode. We're going to call her Serita. Before she went to marriage infidelity counseling, she was not aware of the risks. Here's what she said.
I wish that I had found the Betrayal Trauma Recovery podcast before I tried therapy and then spent thousands of dollars. Your podcast is what I needed.
Before we get to her story, let me share with you some of these risks of marriage infidelity counseling that many women are not aware of. I've interviewed over 200 women after discovering their husband's lies and betrayal. They all say the same thing. Counseling seemed like the next logical step. And you're right, it is a logical step. But these same women shared how years later, it didn't improve anything. So here's the risks they wish they would have known. Number 1, if you're confused and doubting yourself and can't quite explain what's wrong, the therapist will often follow your husband's narrative. Number 2, a man who is lying can be extremely convincing, even to a therapist. A manipulative man usually looks very calm and composed, whereas a woman who is being manipulated is going to look confused and disheveled. So number 3 is this often leads to you being blamed for the problems, even though they're not your fault. So number 4, the women told me that they walked out of marriage counseling feeling more confused, more blamed, and that the problems actually got worse. And number 5, the women that I interviewed said that at the time they thought it was just that therapist. So then they tried another one and went through that same cycle. So if you've been betrayed, before trying any type of therapy, you need clarity first. From interviewing all these women, I know that all women who are experiencing this confusion, they try to get help. Sarita, welcome. Let's start at the beginning of your story.
We were very young. We started dating when I was 19. As a young girl, it looked to me like he just had some anger problems. When he would get really angry, he would walk around the school and actually punch the walls. My very first step actually was trying to do counseling with our pastor. This was probably about a year and a half into our marriage. I really started to notice him drift from God, or that's what it seemed like at the time, because prior to that, he was this alleged devoted Christian. He would wake up really early in the morning and do his devotions and pray. And I started to actually get really worried about him, thinking, oh no, like, is he depressed? Is he struggling in his faith? I wanted to come alongside him as the wife. What can I do for you? How can I love you and support you and pray for you and make your life easier? And I didn't realize what was really happening back then. And so we started doing counseling with our pastor, and that was the worst idea on the planet. I did not know that, obviously.
Because that's the most common thing people suggest when someone's having quote unquote relationship problems. People will suggest couple therapy. So can you talk about how that went?
I never really felt heard. I felt like our pastor made a lot of excuses for him. What we did in counseling was we just watched this video series by Paul Tripp. I remember feeling very frustrated after each session, just not feeling like we were getting anywhere. I felt like there was a lot of downplaying, a lot of blaming me, and a lot of, oh, he's just really struggling in his faith. He's really broken and he really needs your support. He really needs your love. He really needs your help. The responsibility was all on me to do instead of on him. There were a lot of excuses being made for him. We both actually decided this is not working, and we decided to stop going. We actually found this church an hour away from us, and so we decided to go check it out, and we loved it. That church was going to save our marriage. And so we actually ended up moving an hour away to be part of this church.
How did that go?
Not good. It ended up being years and years of spiritual abuse from this church. A lot of gaslighting, a lot of pounding passages into my head about how you're going to help save your husband. Just pray for him and love him through your actions and stop constantly trying to say things to him. Peter 3 verse 1, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening.
Wow, that's quite the interpretation of that. Why in the world would God tell anybody to not fear something that is frightening? Like, God doesn't want us to submit to evil. The interpretation of that doesn't even make sense.
Exactly. So that is the passage that was drilled into my head for years and years. Win him without a word. Just basically be as perfect as you humanly can. As a wife, make sure that you are upkeeping the house, taking care of the children, removing every possible stressor at home for him so that he doesn't explode on you. I remember friends telling me, Sarita, it's actually absurd to me to think about how much time you spend cleaning and cooking because your house is always spotless. And we had 4 kids in 4 years. I was always pregnant or always nursing. I mean, he pretty much always came home to a warm cooked meal, homemade. Like everything was taken care of for him. I took care of finances. Throughout this time of us going to this church, he actually almost killed me. He went to jail for that. I came to the elders and my mentor and I told them, look, this is where I'm at. I am feeling a lot of bitterness. I do not feel an ounce of empathy anymore for him, and I need help because I want to forgive him. I want to care about what's going on with him, but I just don't anymore. I don't want to stay in this place. Can you please help me? And then 1 week after, our elders came to our house with papers in their hands, and we were given papers of church discipline. He was being put under discipline for emotional abuse, harshness with his wife, not stepping up as a husband. I was put under church discipline for my unforgiveness and my bitterness toward him.
Wow.
And so that was a really big slap in the face.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I came to you desperate, seeking help and telling you, I don't want to stay in this place. And instead of that, you slapped me with church discipline.
Did you know of any porn use and infidelity at the time?
Oh, yeah. He was very cold, extremely cold. I remember feeling like he hated me. I remember begging him in tears almost every night to just come to bed with me, telling him, like, I love you. I want to spend time with you. And I remember him essentially telling me to F off. And I would cry myself to sleep. This went on for years. And he was watching porn or playing video games. I actually remember having to hide finances from him. If I didn't hide that money, it would be completely gone. And I remember many nights being woken up in the middle of the night, a lot of sexual coercion. And I remember telling him, no, I'm not ready for another baby right now. The way that I actually conceived our 4th child was marital rape. I obviously would never take back that baby ever. Every single pregnancy of mine, I was on bed rest in mass amounts of pain. He did not care. My body was his and he essentially owned it, and he was gonna make sure that he got what he needed. I remember a lot of times asking him, hey honey, are you doing okay? Like, how is the porn use going? Is there anything that I can do as your wife to support you? I am willing to basically be your object if you would stop betraying me. I actually was always available. We can do this. I'm here. I'm not going to tell you no. I used to try to initiate a lot, and he would turn me down nearly every single time. And it was crushing.
Did the church encourage this kind of idea that you needed to be available for sex all the time?
It was very much within the teachings of our church. As the wife, you should be available to your husband. Unless you are sick or unless you have a valid reason.
I don't want to is not a valid enough reason, apparently.
Yes, exactly. And the only times that I ever actually turned him down were when I was pregnant and in tons of pain. Because I knew if he doesn't do it here, he is going to go somewhere else.
You probably didn't recognize at the time that this was a form of resistance. You were trying to get him to be kind to you. You were trying to stop his behavior from hurting you. And this is what you had been told would make the situation better. But yeah, my guess is you didn't recognize it as a form of resistance at the time.
Yeah, no, I didn't. It was just me doing my biblical duty as a wife. When we conceived our 4th child, I remember coming forward to the elders, and they did have a sit down with us and say, no means no. Like, you cannot rape your wife. It was like a slap on the wrist. There was no comfort or reprieve. It was just, we got you pregnant. Now you got to deal with it. That is when his behaviors actually really escalated. He had been hiding behind this mask for so many years, especially with this church community and with our friends and our family, that he was this Christian man that had these values and these morals. girls, and he loved his wife and he took care of his family. And I think when people started to see through it, he finally felt peace to just be who he was. He started a lot of drinking, hanging out with very questionable people, and he stopped going to church, going on dating sites, hookup sites. And granted, it could have started before.
So the second the church situation wasn't helping him exploit you anymore, he was done with it.
Pretty much. Yep. If they were going to expose him, he just wasn't going to come anymore.
I want to stress that because so many women are like, if someone would discipline him, then we might be able to get help and then maybe our marriage could be good. But a lot of times when that does occur, when he's exposed, things don't get better. They actually get worse. My guess is you never would have guessed back then that discipline would have made it worse.
I thought the church, the congregation would step up. I was sitting in church alone with my 4 children, everyone looking at me. Everyone avoided me like the plague.
It's so awful. I'm so sorry. So for our listeners who are thinking like, oh, if I could get a diagnosis or if I could get someone to explain to him how bad this is, he already knows what he's doing. He knows what's going on. Nobody tells a woman that. They all say you just need couple therapy and you need to get him help and be understanding with him.
And they don't realize how damaging couples therapy actually is, especially for the victim, but even for him because it enables him. And when you said you don't need a diagnosis, I had begged him to go see a psychiatrist, and he finally did. And they actually interviewed me too. They wanted to know what my take on things was. And the psychiatrist at the time was heavily leaning toward antisocial personality disorder, so sociopathy. He went to probably 2 or 3 visits with that doctor. And I think by the time he realized what they were coming to, that was when he said, I'm not going back. I remember the psychiatrist telling me, I think this is what we are dealing with. And what's wild is I actually ended up meeting with my mentor from back then. I told her that. And she said, oh yeah, that's not a surprise to me at all. Me and the pastors used to always say that he was absolutely a sociopath.
What?
And I just remember thinking like, you guys knew years ago and you didn't tell me.
And also you didn't say, hey, how can we support you to get to safety? Did anyone ever ask you that?
No.
Yeah, that is super, super alarming.
She ended up blaming me. I asked her, I said, why didn't you guys tell me that? And she said, I don't think you would have listened.
She never gave you the opportunity to listen.
Right. You never gave me the chance. And it doesn't matter whether or not I would have listened. It was your responsibility to say something. You don't get to decide what you think I'm going to hear.
As an advocate, I observe men continually trying to get to safety. And sometimes they don't feel like what I'm telling them is the safest option. At the time, they might say something like, he's not really abusive. And I believe it's because that feels too unsafe because the things they're describing are definitely abuse. That's why a lot of people disagree with our stance here at BTR that betrayal is abuse, but I still say it anyway. Despite the fact that they don't think it's abuse or they think I'm being too harsh because this guy's a really good guy or something. I don't think people understand what it's like to be an abuse victim trying to get to safety and not getting the right information from anybody.
Exactly. That's exactly what I do now. Like when I'm talking with other women about their situation, whether they're currently in it or they just came out of it, I will say that to them. You do realize that is abuse. And some of them will say, no. They'll explain why he acted that way. And I'm always like, no, like I can guarantee you that if we really look at this deeper, this has been going on for a long time. And so I think it's a lot more helpful to just come out and say, no, that is abuse. What you said, I have a lot of people too that disagree with me. They'll think or they'll say, it feels like you just call everything abuse.
Yeah, I have people say that to me too.
Yeah, no, not quite. Once you understand it and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You see it everywhere you go, in your family, in your friendships even, in your work, in acquaintances.
Yeah, it's true. You cannot unsee it.
Everything became much more exposed. I found out about the hookup site and I ended up having surgery when our newborn was 6 weeks old. And he actually left me with our 4 children. During the entire time, he was out getting wasted, doing who knows what. By the end of that month was when I came to find out about everything. And that is when I decided to leave. Before I finally left for good, he actually did go through a very short-term addiction treatment, but he left early. He didn't even even graduate.
What type of addiction?
Alcoholism. It took a matter of about a month before the mask started to fall off. I remember standing on my front porch praying and getting this impression from God where he essentially said to me, I can save him whether you are married to him or not. I've got this from here. You go and be free. And I felt this physical release. Oh my goodness, I can breathe. Because for years I had been told, you have to save your husband. I filed for divorce and I felt a lot of grief and I was heartbroken and destroyed. And then I ended up deciding that I regretted it. So I was like, I'm going to save my marriage. It was this whole thing where he was actually supposed to break it off with his then girlfriend and I was supposed to break it off with my then boyfriend. And I kept up my end of the deal. I initially left him in April and by December was when I was officially served with papers from him. And then we were divorced the following year.
So Sarita is now going to share what happened with her second marriage. So why don't you just start at the beginning?
I actually met him when I was 16 years old. He was in this friend group that my ex used to hang out with a lot. It was interesting because back then I was never attracted to him. On top of that, he was 7 years older than me. As an adult now looking back, well, it's kind of weird that he was comfortable hanging out with 16 and 17-year-olds. Granted, nothing inappropriate ever happened between us back then. When we were friends, I would talk to him about this relationship here and there. It was not very often. There were a couple times that he had given me advice. So his cousin ended up dying in a car accident. It was a really sad situation, but I went to the funeral and I saw him, like, good to see you, whatever. Through the years, we very loosely kept in contact. At one point in time, he came to a church event with me and my first husband. During that meeting, he showed me this list that he carried around with him of what he wants in a woman. And it was this bullet pointed list of like brunette, she's got to have all these character traits, body traits, like eye color.
Was it mostly physical?
Yes, mostly physical. He did have some like, she has to love the Lord and stuff like that because he did claim to be a believer. So there was some of that stuff like sprinkled in there, but it was really, this is my perfect woman, essentially.
Physically.
Yeah. And I remember thinking back then, it's kind of weird. Like, so you're not even willing to consider another woman that's outside of that.
But also not like has a good sense of humor. Did it have anything about her personality?
I don't remember. His big points on there were like the physical traits. And then, like I said, she has to love the Lord. But it was almost like she has to love the Lord was like this added bonus. But really, he's looking for this woman that fits this perfect mold. I actually remember seeing his first wife on Facebook. And I used to comment on those posts like, oh my gosh, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. She's beautiful. It was just like friend to friend. I'm like, wow, I watched your journey with your first wife. So anyway, when my husband at the time went through a treatment program, what do you know? His recovery coach was, my second ex. So I am desperately trying to do everything I possibly can to save this marriage. I am so committed to this marriage and this man. I remember telling my second husband, hey, please take care of him. Please love on him, check in on him. I actually worked at that treatment facility as well. He was in the men's building and then I was in the women's building. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, I will. He was going through a separation with his wife. During both of our first marriages, we're dealing with separation at the same time. And that was something that bonded us. My first marriage ended years later. I saw him in the parking lot and I ran up to him. I gave him a hug. I was like, I haven't seen you in years. It's so good to see you. And at this time, we're both single. And so I'm like, we really should catch up sometime. It's been so long. We went bowling and we went out to eat and we just had a fun time. We played basketball. He was actually very intentional about saying, like, I am not interested. You're a friend. Because when we would go out to eat and stuff together as friends, people would be like, oh my gosh, you guys are such a cute couple. And I'm not kidding you. He would literally gag and be like, oh, no, I would never date her. She's just a friend.
Were you kind of interested in him or were you like, this is great, I like being his friend? Was there a part of you that was like, well, if he did want more, then I would want more too?
I was actually seeing someone else during that summer. I like just being friends.
Now, you had seen his list of what I want in a woman. Did you fit some of that criteria at all? Or were you thinking in your mind, well, of course, that's rude, but I can see why he's not interested because I've seen his list and I'm not really what he's looking for? Did that enter your mind at all?
No, I really didn't fit his list other than he wanted a girl that was short and I had long black hair. I'm Asian Indian and I have a little darker complexion. I'm not super dark, but tan. There were a couple of girls that he was very interested in during the summer. One of them was a friend of mine, and she had been like family to me for many years, and he was just obsessed with her. He would be like, "Can you please just talk to her and see if she'll go out with me or just let me take on a date?" And I would always be like, "No, I'm not doing that for you because if she already told you no, it's a no." Because she was a bartender and he would go in to have a drink or whatever and try to talk to her. And I remember thinking back then, dude, take a hint. He did this with her and with another girl. I remember telling him, "You have got to stop. Give it a rest." And he was like, "I just wish they would give me a chance. I just want to take him on a date, just one date." And I'm like, but the answer was no. So just move on.
Looking back, do you think that he was maybe using you to get to her?
Very possible.
Because these guys are so transactional. They're not doing it just for fun. They have a goal in mind and they're trying to accomplish that goal.
Exactly. I was dating other people and enjoying single life. He had his son during the last month of summer for a couple weeks. We got our kids together once and we took him to the fair. His son ended up getting sick at one point and he reached out to me and he's like, "What do I do?" I'm thinking he's a single dad. He's trying so hard. He just needs a woman to show him this is what you do when your kid's sick. So at the end of summer, he called me out of nowhere and he goes, "When I was on the way home from dropping off my son, my car broke down. So his car is stuck in a shop 12 hours away. He takes a plane back home and he calls me and goes, 'Can I stay with you while my car is getting worked on?' Because he was actually living with his parents." This is a 33-year-old man and he lived a half hour from town. Half hour from where he worked. And so he goes, "Would you be okay with me staying in the living room? I'll sleep on the floor. I don't know how I'm going to get to work every day because my car's stuck in the shop and I don't have money to fix it right now. And I can't get a ride to and from work every day." There was that little voice that was like, "I don't know how I feel about this. This is kind of a big ask." I'm a single mom and thinking, I'm just not really sure if I'm comfortable with this. I ended up ignoring that small voice. And I was like, I guess if it's only for a few weeks, I don't have a bedroom. I don't have anything. Like, you can sleep on the living room floor. And he was like, "That's totally fine." And because we both worked at the same place, he expected me then to take him to work every day. It was a perfect setup. He's just using me. I did not work every day. I was actually technically on call. So there were many mornings that I was waking my kids up at 6:30 in the morning, getting them ready so that we could take him to work. It was a huge sacrifice for me to do this. He knew that and never expressed any gratitude for it. He was just kind of like, "Thanks." That was it. He never offered to help pay for bills. He never offered, "Can I give you $300 to help cover the extra utilities?" Like, nothing.
Or even gas because you're driving him.
Nope. He was very much like, "I'm just using you and I'm not giving you anything in return." And so by the end of that month, I'm like, "Okay, what's going on here?" And he was like, "I've just been trying so hard to save up money to get my car fixed so that I can get it back."
Maybe he lied about the car and it wasn't even in the shop. Maybe he had to give it to his ex or something.
Maybe. And so with that, of course, I'm feeling guilt. He's just trying to get out of this bind. And then I'm going to be like, "Yeah, so can you help pay rent?"
But he doesn't have any other expenses.
No, none. I'm sitting here thinking, how do you not have anything? Because you've been living with your parents for the last several years now. You work 2 or 3 jobs. Where is all your money going? This isn't adding up at all. It never did add up because he was supposed to move across the country to live by his son. I remember asking him, "I just don't understand. I mean, you guys have been divorced for almost 3 years. How do you not have the money to move?"
What were his excuses?
He's essentially saying I'm the hero here of my son's story because I just don't want him to grow up with all this pain and trauma. I wanted my son here with me and I could have kept him here. I have spent a lot of time praying about this and I knew that if my son grew up here, he was going to grow up with parents that fought all the time, even separated, and it wasn't going to be healthy for him.
If it's used for manipulation, that's the definition of taking God's name in vain. He's saying he prayed about it and that God told him he needed to do this when that wasn't the case.
Yes. exactly it. After we married, I remember telling him, you didn't feel peace from God. You felt relief because then you didn't have to be a father. I said I would be homeless before I go without my kids. I finally knew that I needed to leave and that something needed to change when I actually was able to talk with his ex-wife on the phone quite a few times. I don't think in her mind she was able to name it as abuse. She would just name it as a really bad fight. There was one time that he grabbed her and threw her down to the floor, and another time he held her up against the wall with his hand on her throat and told her he was going to pummel her face into the wall. Things like that. This is a lot more serious than what I thought. I didn't even realize how bad this was. I remember bringing this up to him, and he, of course, was like, that never happened. I don't know why she even said that. He would admit to some of it, but he wouldn't admit to all of it. That's when I was like, wow, this is really serious. We actually were headed for divorce at that time. We had already filed and we were almost done with our divorce. Then we ended up getting back together. About 2 months later, I ended up pregnant. He was enraged. He told me that it was my fault and that I apparently purposely got myself pregnant, accusation after accusation. Then he was like, is it even mine? He stormed around the house and pouted and the silent treatment for 2 days. I remember him saying to me, so are you and the kids going to find somewhere to live then? I knew that I had to go when he physically grabbed me by the arms and he shoved me. And he obviously will not say that. He's like, I just moved you. And I'm like, no. The force and the aggression behind that was a lot. I remember looking into his eyes when he did it. And I knew in that moment, he wants to kill me right now. I saw this look in his eye of, I just want to hurt you. We ended up moving the very next morning. We had help from some of our church members and friends. They actually were watching him and the way that he was talking to me. And one of them later on ended up saying, I could see the abuse clear as day just from how he was talking to you when we were moving. We could tell that you were afraid of him. It was very obvious. I remember feeling so filled with fear. There were multiple occasions that he would show up at the house and he'd be like, I'm sorry, I need to grab something from the garage quick, or I just need to do this. And there was one time that I came home from work and there were flowers on my table. And I remember having this eerie feeling of, oh my gosh, he was in my home. He was here. And like, he's trying to do this supposedly sweet thing for me, but I am terrified. After we separated, I was just looking for all the abuse resources out there. When I found the Betrayal Trauma Recovery podcast, I remember feeling very seen. There was an episode where there was another woman that had been married a couple times. And I remember thinking, wow, this is not just me, because I held a lot of shame around the fact that I didn't learn the first time. I felt very discredited for a very long time. She's a common denominator. She must be the problem. And that's, of course, what a lot of people think. They have no idea. When I found your podcast, I just remember listening to that episode and being like, holy crap, finally, someone else gets it. I loved that episode. And it was really comforting to know you are not the only one. So if you're listening to this and you have been in an abusive marriage already or an abusive relationship, I would say look at your own story. You'll be able to see a lot more clearly. You won't have as much cognitive dissonance where his actions are showing you the complete opposite. He was on this whole, I'm changing, I promise. He had actually purchased this $5,000 course for men who are allegedly trying to change from being abusive. He was making sure that it looked really good on paper. He knows that one of my dreams one day is to have a huge ranch and have all these horses. So he's like, honey, like, I'm going to work so hard so that you can have this dream. And he was just giving me this elaborate, you deserve this. I want to provide this for you, give this to you. Listening to your podcast, I was myself heavily on abuse. I totally knew you're not actually changing, but I remember in the moment, I was like, he is love bombing me. He was future faking me. This is all fake. I was really able to see clearly. You're doing this so that you can tell everyone else, I tried. Look at all the things that I did. I spent thousands of dollars and I put in so much work going to therapy. I started to put up a lot of clear boundaries with him. He ended up signing away his rights during the divorce because he kept pushing the whole, well, it's not mine. He already had it in his mind that I was this whore.
Well, or he's just lying and saying that to blame you as a tactic. That's probably more what it was.
And that's what I battled with. I don't want all these people thinking that I was messing around. But at the same time, I also knew he's probably already telling people that anyway. So like at this point, I might as well just agree with him that this isn't his baby and just move on. And my lawyer even said that because he could easily ask the judge for a paternity test and the judge would grant it to him. So he's not even putting in the effort or the fight to try to make sure that this is his child, which my lawyer was like, this tells me that he knows that that it is. He just doesn't want it to be. And I knew that too. You could put a little skin in the game of trying to get the paternity test to make sure that this is your kid, because he did the same thing with his last child. There was no effort put in whatsoever.
But also, that benefited you. You don't want them to put in the effort.
And I knew he wouldn't. He didn't take responsibility for his first son. So why would he take responsibility now? And my lawyer was like, look, I've worked with countless abuse victims. And he was like, if he doesn't think he's the father, let's just let him think that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He reached out again to my lawyer and was like, are you sure that she's not willing to do a paternity test? And my lawyer said, no, she's not willing. So he said, well, that's really unfortunate, but I guess I'm just going to have to assume that I'm not the father. And so my lawyer said to him, okay, we will agree with you that you are not the father of this child. So then he signed the non-parentage statement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's a ghost. The biggest thing with abuse and the hardest thing about it after my first marriage is I wish that I would have found your podcast. I don't think that I would have found myself in another abusive marriage, because I think that I would have been able to see it a lot more clearly.
Well, thank you, Sarita. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your bravery and sharing your strength with other women.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciated it.